Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Primetime Newscast in the English language and Canal International. I'm called Maureen Z. We begin with our top stories. In the northwest region of Cameroon, hundreds of villages of Kijum-Kiku, commonly called Big Babangi, have been displaced from their original habitats. They have been trekking long distances and trooping into neighboring Bambui, fleeing fresh fighting between the military and separatist fighters, which, according to reporters, has already led to over a dozen deaths within the past few days. And a new global financing pact holding in France's capital, Paris, ends today, alongside other African and Western counterparts. Paul Biya has seized the occasion to reiterate various concerns he has been expressing in recent months. And Equatorial Guinea is envisaging a giant economic expansion by 2025 ahead of an announced economic diversification forum. The country's Minister of Planning and Economic Diversification is in Cameroon to tap from the experience of Central Africa's biggest economy. Those are major stories. Details right ahead. Good evening once more. In the northwest region of Cameroon, villages of Kijum-Kiku, commonly called a Big Babanki, have been displaced from their original habitats. They have been trekking long distances and trooping into neighboring Bambui, fleeing fresh fighting between the military and separatist fighters, which, according to reporters, has already led to over a dozen deaths within the past few days. More on the story with our reporter Gladys Ambu-Diba.
At a time when there is a glimmer of hope for a return to normalcy with displaced persons trying to go back to their original localities, there has been a wave of movement of persons from Kajakokum village in the northwest region. Dozens of men, women and children have been arriving neighboring Bambui, headquarters of Tubac subdivision, after trekking for close to 10 kilometers from Big Babanki.
As time we begin the zone, no, sorry, we don't trek from Babanki to Bambui. We don't know why we go so then all about with this for you.
They are fleeing fresh fighting as protagonists in the close to 7-year conflict have been on each other's throat. Reports say government troops invaded Big Babanki village in search of separatist fighters who recently molested and beat up close to 50 old women who opposed arbitrary monthly financial levies imposed on them. Reports say at least 15 people have been killed within the past 2 days as a military operation is underway. At Bambui Four Corners, the weary-looking displaced persons have been invading verandas, corridors, and shops of their host population, some of whom give them a few edibles to quench their hunger and thirst. It is also here at Four Corners Bambui that many make phone calls to relatives and persons of goodwill to receive directives on how to locate them in Bamenda and elsewhere. Commercial bikes and township taxis have been conveying the fleeing people to where they are expected to begin the life of yet another group of internally displaced persons. This latest situation has led to the desertion of the Bambui-Babanki-Fundong road, with many people being unable to catch up with economic, medical, and other socio-cultural appointments as the motor parks remain ghosts of themselves.
And despite all efforts put in place by government troops to fight insecurity in Anglophone regions, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs say close to 4,600 people were displaced from their homes across the Anglophone regions as a result of the protracting crisis. More the story with our reporter, Saleh Sharifa.
We heard a sound of gunshot, boom.
The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says close to 4,600 men, women and children were displaced from their homes across the northwest and southwest regions during the month of April as a result of the protracting crisis. The internally displaced persons are reported to have fled the nearby bushes, villages and towns to escape eruptions of violence as government troops continue battling separatist fighters. The UN office says the most affected divisions include the Manyu in the southwest and the Donga Mantong in the northwest region.
We were so scared. We started running, so I never knew where my father went. As we were leaving, our house was put ablaze with fire.
According to the UN agency, most of the displacements are temporary, with the civilian population gradually adapting to the crisis by taking shelter during clashes or other forms of violence and returning to their settlements when calm returns.
We started running. I was misplaced in the forest, which I stayed there for 2 weeks without seeing my father. When I was in the forest for that good 2 weeks, I had nothing to eat, and it was very difficult for me to cope. I was just crying and seeing bloods on the ground.
It adds that the highest number of displacements date back to April 1 and 2, when a group believed to be from neighboring Nigeria invaded some villages in the Akko district in the northwest region and abducted at least 33 people. They also seized food and other valuables from members of the community. The abductees were released 6 days later in unclear circumstances. The UN says the conflict across English-speaking Cameroon has already caused the internal displacement of more than 600,000 people since 2017. Over 86,000 others are believed to have fled to neighboring Nigeria.
And a gang specialized in robbing microfinance institutions in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, have been apprehended by the police. The culprits who have veered away with millions of francs CFA from the different structures were presented to the public this Friday. More on the story with our reporter, Hyson Cha.
Without an iota of fear, this is a remake of how the two culprits got into this microfinance institution at the Carousel neighborhood, Yaoundé, on Thursday, June 15, at about 10 a.m., pretending to be clients, then pointed a gun and a knife at the workers, demanding for money, thanks to the courage of this security agent as he narrates the scene.
I was coming out to go and empty the dustbin. Yeah, I didn't know that it was an armed robber. In my greatest surprise, when going to put the dustbin down, he took the gun and hit it on my head. I pushed the pistolet. That's how he broke it on my arm. So I started shouting, "Oh Seku, oh Seku, oh Seku, oh Seku." Yeah, I didn't know that there were people around that heard my voice. So that's how he escaped from my hands and left out. When going out, I didn't know that they have a motorcycle bike outside. So that's how I kept on and running after him. So when he wanted to climb the motorbike, that's how I plucked onto him and hold him. That's how people comes around and started beating him and fighting all the like.
And aside this, the judicial police had received complaints from 3 other microfinance institutions against the same gang operating with a well-structured modus operandi.
The perpetrator used to localize first the microfinance where they wanted to perpetrate their theft. They will come and they will present themselves like a potential client who wanted to open bank accounts. After having access to the cashier's office, they will just put all of them in the same room, and they will collect money and phones before leaving, and they will scamper off on their bike.
Presenting the supposed armed robbers to the public that watched the mouth-watering scene, police authorities advise.
The Delegate General for National Security advised bank owners to multiply the security networks and observe the behavior of their customers to easily identify those with negative intentions.
The presumed criminals will be presented to the State Council to answer for their crimes.
And the gendarmerie have successfully laid hands on a large gang of thieves, specialized or involved in the kidnapping of a 3-year-old child, demanding a ransom of 22 million francs CFA in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé. The modus operandi of the 7 and how they were arrested was presented this Friday to the press. More with Beatrice Ngam.
The 36-month-old baby boy still enjoying a reunion with parents after being kidnapped for 2 days. The incident occurred last Friday after midday when the parents have gone to the mosque for traditional prayer at the Awusa quarter, Corbison neighborhood in Yaoundé. 3 individuals on board a motorbike then pick up kids in front of the house to an unknown destination. Hours later, they called the parents asking for 22 million CFA francs ransom. The kidnap was possible as a neighbor was among the supposed kidnappers.
Donc ils savaient qu'une fois l'enfant est enlevé, les parents vont paniquer et ils vont déposer de l'argent quelque part.
The parents instead alerted the police and later the National Gendarmerie. The commander then sent his elements into urgent investigation. The tracking from their telephone calls took the Gendarmerie same night to Lebudi, where 4 were caught. The mission carried him to Oja, Corbison, and to Okola. Along the line, the gendarmerie were threatened, warning them to ensure money is sent or the child will be killed. Sensing tension, the supposed kidnappers then decided to abandon child who was being catered for by the girl among the team in front of the Okola gendarmerie post. The baby, 2 days in captivity, was taken to hospital for medical control. Though traumatized, which is normal, the baby has regained form after meeting parents.
Ça va mieux. Vous l'avez vu là, en train de jouer, un enfant de Dieu.
Investigation continued. 3 others were caught, among them a tradi practitioner who had received 250,000 to ensure they catch ransom. The joy of the father of the 3-year-old baby, one of total satisfaction, as he narrates ordeal and happiness. Military civilian cooperation saluted for the successful outcome, like the many other
The new global financial park holding in France's capital, Paris, ends today along other African leaders and Western counterparts. Paul Biya has seized occasion to reiterate various concerns he has been expressing in recent months. Some of the worries presented by the head of state, Paul Biya, is recounted in the following story with Saleh Sharifa.
Rural electrification is the process of bringing electrical
strengthening financing for the least developed countries and countries most vulnerable to change. This is the theme of the Forum on the New Global Financial Pact, which ends June 23, 2023 in the French capital, Paris. Alongside other African and Western counterparts, Paul Biya has seized the occasion to reiterate various concerns he has been expressing in recent months. Regarding climate change, Paul Biya believes that development countries which pollute less deserve to be rich countries which pollute a lot. According to him, it is time for the developed countries to respect their commitments and precisely to set up a $100 billion fund for vulnerable countries to compensate for the losses and damage they suffer as a result of climate disruption. In recent years, President Biya has been particularly vocal on the subject. On December 12, 2022, and on the sidelines of the USA-Africa Summit, Paul Biya emphasized the need for a global financing mechanism tailored to tackle the challenges facing, especially the African continent. According to him, this will enable the continent's structural transformation and gradual independence from development aid and export credit. The Paris Summit provides Paul Biya another opportunity to reaffirm his position.
And Equatorial Guinea is envisaging a giant economic expansion by 2025 ahead of the announced Economic Diversification Forum. The country's Minister of Planning and Economic Diversification is in the country to tap from the experience of Central Africa's largest economy. Kejan Henry Atembe completes the story for us.
Oil-rich Equatorial Guinea is poised to diversify its economy after too much reliance on petroleum. This is what justifies the visit of that country's Minister of Planning and Economic Diversification, Gabriel Mbaga Obiang Lima, on June 23.
The main reason of my trip to the lands of Cameroon is because as a new Minister of Planning and Economic Diversification, we have decided that before we can launch our initiative of diversification in the Republic of Equatorial Guinea, it will be important to do a tour and being able to visit other countries of CEMAC. We have started with Cameroon. We will visit Gabon, Congo Brazzaville, Chad and Central Africa.
On the sidelines of his visit to Cameroon, Minister Mbaga Obiang Lima paid a courtesy visit at the ultra-modern television complex, Canal International. He was received by the General Manager, Joseph Futsu. Both men exchanged on the prospects of his economic tour in Cameroon.
And clearly, this will create an added value for all of us. But at the same time, it is very important, the regional projects. And one of the regional projects that we believe that are going to be critical, for example, between Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea, is the bridge that needs to be done between Equatorial Guinea and Cameroon Campo and Rio Campo in the Rio Ntem. Also, there's another project. It is the dry port in Ebibing that also are going to be very important so we can develop areas in agriculture. So we do believe that those regional projects are going to be critical for the development and achieve a diversification.
Though Equatorial Guinea can boast as the third largest oil production country in sub-Saharan Africa, Mr. Obiang Lima thinks diversification will give each country of the sub-region a comparative advantage in the production and manufacturing of certain goods.
One of the critical things, and I just remember because it's very important, is that we are going to organize an economic forum in Malabo. This is going to be in October. And it's going to be an economic forum for diversification, not just for Equatorial Guinea. We do have invited both government and private sector of Cameroon. We will do the same thing for Gabon, Chad, the rest. So it will be a place that businessmen of the entire CEMAC can be able to meet and discuss.
This is why they are engaging the public and private sectors in the Central African sub-region, especially as Equatorial Guinea has planned its first ever economic forum for economic diversification known as SIPOPO 2023. The Sustainable Economic Development Strategy will target key sectors like tourism, blue, yellow, green, and digital economy. This will facilitate direct foreign investment as they lobby for strategic partners across the region. According to the World Bank, Equatorial Guinea has the highest gross national income.
Youth unemployment remains a big challenge in Cameroon, with the unemployment rate standing at about 7%. The Chamber of Commerce is out to assist young Cameroonians with projects through project management skills. Kejan Henry tells us more.
According to World Bank statistics, youth unemployment in Cameroon stands at about 8%. This statistics has called for a reorientation of the youths in different domains. With the digital economy penetration, many youths are becoming entrepreneurs. Unfortunately, these young startups lack the necessary ingredients for them to move on.
Working with Chamber of Commerce all these years in trying to promote the creation of enterprise has been a wonderful initiative, and the partnership has gone so far.
Conscious of these shortcomings, the Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Craft is organizing a capacity building workshop to help young entrepreneurs with projects in the pipe. This is happening in partnership with the National Employment Fund.
Our experts are going to drill them on how to come up with that project, accompany them. And if their project is feasible, we have a credit committee that sits and approves the project. And when the project is being financed, we supervise them and accompany them for them to have a strong standing.
Cutting across different sectors of the economy, the skills acquired is expected to be well implanted and sustainable in the business.
Kejan Harriet Tembe reporting there, and that brings us to the end of this edition of the Prime Time Newscast in the English language and Canal International. Thanks so much for watching. We're coming up next is the brief with Mathieu Ofangwa. As we'll be back, same time, this time around on Monday. Good night.